The Great Pyramid at Giza has remained a complete mystery in modern times. When was it built? Who built it? Above all else, what is it? Conventional Egyptology declares that all pyramids were tombs for the pharaohs. The sophistication, required technology, and cost of the Great Pyramid conflict with the thought that it is simply a tomb. This level of effort for a burial place stretches common sense to the breaking point. To quote Alan Alford, "It is so crazy to suggest that the unique design of the Great Pyramid was a legacy from an earlier, more advanced culture. In my view, it is certainly much less crazy than continuing to believe that the pyramid was constructed as a tomb for a dead king, and that he built this totally over-engineered and revolutionary wonder of the world with absolute perfection at the first attempt." It is proposed that the Great Pyramid was a nuclear fission production mill, and it was a technical and financial success. It did not create energy, but packaged energy within artificially created isotopes of plutonium. This hypothesis is not fantastic in the sense that it would be a physical impossibility, but is fantastic only in the fact that it upsets the conventional history of man. The approach is to drop preconceptions about religion and culture and look upon the Great Pyramid as a business investment. Wait till you hear this. The history of the ancient Egyptian civilization was recorded in hieroglyphs cut into stone. Even when paint was used on the stone, the symbolization was first cut into the stone. None of these stone records attribute the Great Pyramid to a pharaoh or anyone else. There is no record of when it was built, why was it built, or what its purpose was. There are no symbols cut into the stone of the Great Pyramid. The accuracy and the precision of the Great Pyramid, both at the level of individual blocks and as a whole, are without precedent. Modern-day engineers are at a loss as to how it was done. The tools described as necessary for the cutting of stone and the positioning of stone have never been found, nor are they referred to in ancient records. The precise cutting of granite, including precise interior surfaces, requires complex, powered machinery with industrial diamond bits. The raising and exact positioning of granite blocks as heavy as 80 tons to heights as much as 300 feet above grade would require huge, powerful cranes according to current industrial practice. It is simply beyond the capacity of wooden structures and human laborers. The entire positioning of the whole structure is so accurate that modern surveying optical equipment would seem to be an absolute necessity. The interior fit of stones in the King's Chamber and Great Gallery appears to be almost watertight. A mortar was used which had a higher hardness than the stone it was used on. The mortar was analyzed for elemental content, but it has not been duplicated. The construction has a hard industrial signature rather than an artistic one. The Great Pyramid was built to last as a process plant for a very long time. The heart of the pyramid is the King's Chamber, and the heart of that is the sarcophagus. This was also the heart of the process. The uranium oxide would have been fitted into the sarcophagus. It may have been put in as bricks or pellets or even in granular form, depending on the oxide used. The sarcophagus was fabricated from a very hard granite, even harder and denser than the rest of the granite used to build the King's Chamber. This fact is a very significant signature of its function. The interior dimensions of the sarcophagus are very precise. This is consistent with maintaining a very exact amount of geometry of the uranium oxide. The outside of the sarcophagus was rough cut. This reflects the fact that the outside surface of the granite is quite unimportant to the fissioning process. The granite must be able to withstand the high temperatures and radiation emitted by the fissioning uranium oxide. It has to survive the damage from radiation for a long time. It must allow passage of most of the neutrons, which it does. Photographs show that this granite sarcophagus has undergone radiation and heat damage in a very gradual manner over a very long time. Its appearance is very reminiscent of metals and minerals, which experience long-term radiation in the canyons of the plutonium mills at Hanford. The damage or wear indicates an operating time of many years. The King's Chamber is made of very large blocks of granite. The inner surface of the granite bears a striking resemblance to interior walls of a plutonium mill. Once again, there is the appearance of long-term exposure to radiation and heat. The floor and walls of the chamber appear to be very well sealed. This is consistent with the King's Chamber being flooded with water. The water in the chamber has multiple roles. It is the medium, which slows down neutrons and reflects them back into the uranium oxide pile. It is also the mechanism for removing heat from the chamber. The south air shaft from the outside to the chamber would have been a pipe for continuously adding water to the system. After a short horizontal run from the King's Chamber, it rises at a 45-degree angle to the outside of the pyramid. Hydraulic calculations for water indicate that the flow would vary from 5,900 to 8,400 gallons per minute, depending on the back pressure of the water and steam in the King's Chamber. The water would have flowed out through the entrance to the King's Chamber down into the Great Gallery. The exiting water would have carried away radioactive soluble isotopes. A second air shaft connecting the chamber and Great Gallery to the outside would have been a vent, which released steam and non-condensable gases. The final role of water is very interesting and quite ingenious. The reflection of neutrons by the water back into the uranium pile must have a careful, narrow control to it. The mean free path of a neutron in water is about 1 foot. A neutron must undergo about 6 to 7 collisions in the water to finally reach the appropriate speed and be reflected back towards the nuclear bed. If not enough neutrons are reflected, the fission reaction will die down. If too many neutrons are reflected back, the reaction will begin to grow rapidly, producing too much energy. However, when the energy production goes up, the water heats up and begins to form steam, and the steam occupies about 1,000 times as much volume as water, and it would progressively occupy more of the volume of the King's Chamber as more energy was released. The design is a passive and very stable system for controlling the rate of fissioning in the sarcophagus. When operating, the King's Chamber would have always had some volume of steam in the upper portion. This volume would have grown and shrunk in response to the fissioning rate, keeping it in control. The complex structure above the King's Chamber is a sort of shock absorber. The monstrous blocks of granite, with air pockets between them, absorb most of the effect of the explosive steam at the end of a batch run of uranium oxide. In fact, the granite beams could crack all the way through and still remain in place. The much smaller and much weaker blocks of limestone could not be used for the sealing of the King's Chamber.